Let's be honest, when you hear the word carbs, you probably think of things like pasta or bread, right? Well, today we're going to go way, way beyond that. We're diving into the incredibly sophisticated molecules that not only build our world, but also act as a kind of secret code for our cells. So let's crack that code and see what life is really made of. Okay, so to get us started, here's a little puzzle for you. Think about it. A potato is soft, starchy, totally digestible. A tree trunk is, well, it's a tree trunk. It's tough, it's fibrous. Why can your body pull energy out of the potato, but not the tree? It's a fantastic question, and the answer is surprisingly simple and, well, just really elegant. And here is the twist. The really wild part, they are both made of the exact same stuff. Chemically, they are nearly identical. Both are just these massive, long chains of one simple sugar, glucose. So if the building block is the same, what on earth makes them so different? To figure that out, we have to look at the molecular blueprint. So to solve our potato versus tree mystery, we've got to go back to basics. We'll start by looking at what makes a carbohydrate in the first place. And you might be surprised by just how many different jobs they have in biology. Okay, so scientifically, what are we talking about? Well, carbohydrates are the most plentiful biomolecules on the entire planet. The technical definition is that they're aldehydes or ketones with at least 2 hydroxyl groups. Now, that specific chemical structure, that is the key to everything they can do. And wow, do they have a lot of jobs. They are so much more than just fuel. I mean, yes, they are incredible energy stores, but they also form rigid structures, like the cell walls that keep plants standing tall. And this is the really cool part, they act as signals, like little antennas on the surface of our cells that help them recognize each other. Now, let's zoom in and get down to the basic building blocks. Because to understand these huge structures, you first have to understand the very subtle, but absolutely critical rules that control the individual bricks. So that fundamental unit is called a monosaccharide. It's just a simple sugar. The best way to think of these is like Lego bricks. Every single complex carbohydrate in the world, from the starch in your potato to the fiber in a tree, is built by linking these simple units together in different ways. And these little Lego bricks come in 2 main flavors. It all depends on where a key chemical group, this carbon-oxygen double bond, is located. If it's at the very end of the carbon chain, we call it an aldose. If it's stuck anywhere else in the middle, it's a ketose. It seems like a small difference, but it really changes how the molecule behaves. And this brings us to a really crucial idea in biochemistry, stereoisomers. These are molecules that look identical on paper. Same atoms, same bonds connecting them, but in 3-dimensional space, they're actually mirror images of each other. And in biology, that 3D shape, it's everything. This quote just nails it. Our body's machinery, our enzymes, they are incredibly specific. Trying to use the wrong stereoisomer is literally like trying to force your left glove onto your right hand. It just won't fit. This idea of stereospecificity is absolutely central to our story today. Now, these simple sugars don't stay as straight little chains for very long, especially when they're in water, like in our cells. They do this amazing little chemical gymnastics move, a transformative twist, folding up into rings. And this is what unlocks their true potential to build things. Let's see how that works. So let's take our good friend glucose. When it's in its linear form, a hydroxyl group from way down at one end of the molecule reaches over and attacks the carbonyl group at the other end. It's like it's biting its own tail. And this reaction causes the whole chain to fold up on itself, forming a nice, stable, 6-membered ring. Now here's the magic. When that ring forms, a new hydroxyl group gets created, and it can end up in one of 2 positions, either pointing down, which we call alpha, or pointing up, which we call beta. It seems like such a tiny, insignificant detail, right? Up or down? But I need you to remember this because this tiny difference, it is the entire answer to our potato tree puzzle. All right, we've got our building blocks now, these alpha and beta glucose rings. So let's zoom back out and see what happens when we start linking thousands or even millions of them together to build the true megastructures that literally shape the world around us. These megastructures are called polysaccharides, or sometimes glycans. They're just really, really long polymers made of monosaccharides, and they generally have one of 2 main jobs, storing energy or providing structure. Okay, remember alpha glucose, the one with the downward pointing bond? When you link a ton of those together, the geometry of that specific bond forces the chain to coil up into a beautiful helix. This shape is absolutely perfect for packing a huge amount of energy into a tiny space. And that's exactly what starch is in plants and what glycogen is in our muscles and liver. But what if you use the other Lego brick? What if you build with beta-glucose? Well, that upward-pointing bond creates a chain that is perfectly straight and rigid, like a tiny molecular rod. These straight fibers can then line up next to each other and form these incredibly strong cross-linked sheets. And that is cellulose. That's the stuff that makes trees strong enough to stand up. And there it is. We are back at our puzzle. A potato is starch. It's made of alpha linkages. Your digestive enzymes are perfectly shaped to fit and break that bond to release the glucose for energy. A tree is cellulose. It's made of beta linkages, and your enzymes just can't sit that shape. It's the wrong-handed glove. So for us, it just passes right through as fiber. That one tiny difference is everything. But, storage and structure aren't the only reasons our bodies build these giant polymers. There's another, much more urgent reason. Check out this number. If a liver cell stored all of its glucose as individual free-floating molecules, its internal concentration would reach a staggering 0.4 molar. So what? Well, at that concentration, basic physics, osmosis, would take over. Water would flood into the cell, trying to dilute the sugar, and the cell would swell up and literally burst. So by linking thousands of glucose molecules into one single giant glycogen molecule, the cell dramatically lowers that internal concentration, reduces the osmotic pressure, and saves itself from exploding. How brilliant is that? Okay, so carbohydrates are fuel, and their structure. But there's one final layer to this story, and honestly, it's a huge frontier in modern biology. It's the role of carbohydrates as pure information. It turns out every single one of our cells is decorated with this complex, fuzzy coat of sugar chains that are attached to proteins and lipids on its surface. This entire collection of carbohydrates is called the glycome, and it functions like a dense layer of information that identifies the cell and tells the outside world what it is. These little sugar chains aren't just decorative. They are specific signals for cell-to-cell recognition. They tell your immune system if a cell is you or if it's a foreign invader. They even act like molecular zip codes, making sure proteins get delivered to the right place inside or outside the cell. It's an entire complex biological language written in sugar. And that really leaves us with this final thought. We've spent decades mapping the human genome, the code that's written in our DNA. But we are only just beginning to learn how to read the glycome. You just have to wonder, what incredible secrets about health, about disease, about life itself are still waiting for us, written in this complex and beautiful code of sugars?